I'm Park Howell, and welcome to the Business of Story, where I consult, teach, coach, and speak on the applied science and bewitchery of brand and business storytelling, so that you can clarify your story to amplify your impact and simplify your life.
I thought it was just a stupid picture of a pig in the ocean. But after hearing that story, I had to have it. Now I wasn't just buying a picture. I was buying a story. Story literally made the picture worth more money to me.
That's what businesses are about. People buy brands. People buy stories much more than anything else.
I work with a lot of big enterprise companies, but let's just say I always tell folks, drop the PowerPoint, close your laptops, start with your story.
If you want people to get engaged and you want people to act, you have to tell them an emotionally powerful story. That's with great characters, it's with uncertain outcomes, and it's with high stakes and drama.
All business strategy is a story.
Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back. Now, this being the day that it is, I didn't want to have any movie stars or celebrities or the usual people that we have on the show. All right, we never really have movie stars. I wanted to keep it family because it's a different show, but then I ended up getting a movie star anyway. Yes, please welcome my little sister, Lynn Ferguson, everybody. You know what I like? What? I like that they gave me a card with questions on it to ask my sister. How are you today, Lynn?
I'm okay. What are the questions? Come on, I
never look at the questions. It's bad luck. I have them make questions so that that I can ask questions if I don't, I'd always tear the thing up. I'm not comfortable asking questions for other people.
Aren't you in the wrong job then?
No, it's a very good job for me. So you did the voice in Chicken Run of the chicken.
I did. Yeah,
Mac the Scottish chicken.
I did that chicken. Yeah. Do you know what that really worries?
Tell us your American story.
No, I'm going to tell you the thing that really worries me.
Sorry, I don't understand your accent.
Shut up, I understand. I'm really worried, right? I'm really worried. This is true. Sometimes I worry that I'm going to die of bird flu. Do you know what I mean? Because if I die of bird flu, then they'll put this thing on the papers, which is Chicken Run star dies of bird flu. Do you know what I mean? And then I just... that
would be terribly embarrassing after you're dead! It wouldn't matter!
It wouldn't matter to me.
I don't understand that accent anymore, I'm telling you.
I know. And when I went back to London after being here the last time, everyone said, why do you speak with an American accent?
Yeah.
I don't know, do I? Do I speak with an American accent?
I think we can. The only thing that would unite this country at this point in time is that we're all agreed that you do not speak with an American accent. Anyway, we got to go. This is my little sister Lynn, everybody. She'll be back.
Are you in for a treat? Because on today's Business of Story, we have for you the eclectic story artist and self-proclaimed entertainment mongrel, Lynn Ferguson. She's not only the voice of Mac in the animated feature Chicken Run.
Thrust!
What?
I went over my calculations, Hen, and I figured the key element we're missing is thrust.
But a comedy writer, stand-up comedian, playwright, director, producer, and the hysterical and insightful sister of Craig Ferguson, the former host of the Late Late Show on CBS.
We tried going under the wire, and that didn't work. So, the plan is, we go over it.
It was such a delight having this conversation with Lynn. It literally could have gone for hours. And you're going to see what I mean, because she has this amazing wit and wisdom she brings to storytelling, especially in her work helping business executives find the energy and the passion and the honesty in their stories so that they can truly own the boardroom and have some fun while they're doing it. So on today's show, you are going to learn how to tap into that energy of your story to actually become entertaining in the boardroom. How to get people to care about you and what you have to say. You're going to learn how her surprising bout with breast cancer lifted her as a storyteller. She even shares a storytelling exercise at the end of this show that'll add thrust to your communications.
This is us, right? We get in like this, wind up, and let her go.
So strap in and let's have some fun with Lynn Ferguson. Lynn, it is awesome to have you here with us today on Business of Story.
Bless you, Park. You know what? I am so pleased to talk to you. I've listened to these and they're amazing. I love what you're doing. I think that right now, the intention to educate people freely and to give them information is an amazing thing. So I love what you're doing. Well done, you, mister.
Oh, well, thank you, Lynn. And it's so nice for folks like you, story artists, literally from around the world, to come on the show to help us mere mortal communicators do a better job of communicating.
You guys are communicating just beautifully as it is. I think, it's so funny, because I work, mainly I work in entertainment, or that's my background. But more and more I work with business and business people. And I actually use we'll get into this later, I'm sure, because I have so much to say about why it works. But one of the things that I find between people who work in the entertainment industry and people who don't, is that people who don't work in the entertainment industry always seem to have this kind of handicap of, am I allowed to be entertaining? Am I allowed to tell you my story? Am I allowed to be, talking metaphors? Am I allowed to tell you my secrets? It's really kind of amazing. And so one of the things with it is I want to say, and for me, story is something that we were given as a life skill at the very beginning of time in order to prolong the species. We were told, we were able then to communicate, don't go that way, there's a bear or a dinosaur or whatever the hell is down there. There's something scary down there, so don't go there. Right. And we were equally able to say, over that ridge, there's some fish in the lake, so you can get food. And basically, we were able to communicate what we knew and hand it over to the less experienced in order that they could gain from our experience, which in essence is what you're doing with your podcast and what story is there for in the first place.
Yeah, well, it is, to me anyway, story is so primal. It is probably more important than our opposable thumbs for our survival, and is probably the tool that evolved us from cavemen and women to consumers today, because that is how we create meaning out of the madness of being life. Now, you come from a storytelling family. Your brother is Craig Ferguson. I think most Americans know him from the Late Late Show with Craig Ferguson that he hosted from 2005 to 2014. And in fact, you made a cameo or two on his show.
Yeah, well, I wrote on that show for 2.5 years, actually.
Oh, you did?
I did, yeah. I was on it for... I came over on vacation and we were hanging out and he said, do you want to do my show? And I said, no, really, I don't. And then my husband said, you do? And I was like, why though? Well, we talk here. Why would we talk in front of other people? What would be that deal? And so I did. And then it was just really good fun. And then I went back to Britain and I had some shows that I was doing in Edinburgh for the Fringe. I think I had 2 shows at the Fringe that year. And while I was there, I got a call from the guys at CBS and they said, will you come back for the September 11th show? Because we're looking for something to do that's warm. We want to do something warm and we don't want it to be too businessy. Like September 11th is a really difficult thing because that there are, no matter what you're saying, there are people all over the country who are suffering. Right. So it's a difficult thing to pitch into because you want to acknowledge it, but not, kind of push it or make it worse for them. So anyway, they said, do you want to come over? And I was like, sure. And then I came over and then they took me out for dinner and said, can you start working in October? And I was like, oh man. So then we moved over as a family. In 6 weeks, we moved our life from London to LA and we've been here ever since.
And so were you writing for Craig in the show?
Yeah. Yeah, I was.
How was that writing for your brother? Does he throw your jokes back at you and say, you can do better?
I think the deal with it is that it's a writer's room. And when you're writing, actually, it's a really good illustration of story in business. there's a writer's room in late night, in most things actually in TV, and so you have to like be able to cope with your narrative in the dynamic of everybody else's. But also, you are a small piece of a jigsaw in a much bigger money making machine. There are producers, like the whole Roseanne thing, for example. She made her decision. She told her story, right? Whatever crazy story that was, and all manner of people. All those other stories of their lives are totally screwed up because of it, right?
Yeah. And you're talking about her, Roseanne, with her tweet that was disparaging about one of the Obama aides that then promptly had ABC cancel one of their top sitcoms.
Totally. But there are writers and producers and directors and a whole great big, like the caterers, like the interns.
I read somewhere like maybe 200 jobs are associated with one of those shows. Could that be right?
Totally. Yeah, totally. Like I shot an ad. I periodically show off for money. And so I was doing an ad last week, I think. And so just me, they're only filming me. And I guess on the call sheet, there was like 50, 60 people. Like all those people depend on me not being an idiot.
Yeah.
Like that's really the deal. And so the point is with Late Night or with working with Craig, our relationship is our relationship out of business. When we're in business, I have a task to do that is based on what I am capable of doing in a business sense and not what I'm capable of doing as a sister. Obviously because I know him so well, that helped. But I wonder if it's the same actually in other family businesses. You can be related, but in order for the business to flourish, you have to understand your place and your position and what you have to offer as service to the personality of the business, not your own personality. You bring your personality to be of service to the business, the bigger story.
So let's talk, if you could take us maybe back to your childhood growing up with Craig and your other siblings and the family, the business of entertainment through the Ferguson family. I mean, what are the chances of having two Scots be very, prominent entertainers here in America? What, did you grow up in a family of storytellers and entertainers? And can you take us to one of the moments when you knew that this is what you had to do?
I think, to be honest, I don't think that it's certainly true for me, and I wouldn't speak for Craig because he's very capable of speaking for himself. I feel like I'm kind of in the story, so I never have the point where I'm like, oh, this is the beginning or this is the end. I'm in sort of a constant kind of beginning. I feel like I'm in for me, narrative works in flow. So I'm like, this is a good day. This is a not so good day. I don't make those decisions. But I guess growing up, my father worked for the post office, so the mail service. And my father's education stopped when he was 14. The Second World War meant that my father was taken out of school at 7 and he was sent to, so his education stopped at 7, there you go. He was taken out of school and he was sent to the countryside supposedly for his own safety, but basically became a farm labourer, a child labourer, free labour. And then when he came back to Glasgow at 14, he got a job straight away to help support the family. So my father worked his whole life. He made his way up to being postmaster, which was a really high position. But he got there through graft, through loyalty, and through service and honesty. My mother, she was a school teacher, and she did that because, I'm one of 4 children. I'm the youngest of 4 children. They had 4 children under the age of 8, and my father was working night shifts on the mail trains to keep everything together. So she trained and became a school teacher. My family do really enjoy telling stories and having a laugh. They do really respect wit and also honesty. Like honesty was a really big thing in my family. Honesty and the truth. We're just not good on lying. And so there was not really any. I suppose my great grandfather was an escapologist. He was McLaren. The escapology man. He was like the Glasgow Houdini. So he was the closest to being in entertainment, I guess. But entertainment wasn't really in my family. And then there was a guy, it's a guy who lived in this street that we lived in, and he did adverts. I can't remember his name. And we thought he was awesome. And actually, though we thought he was awesome, he thought he was awesome.
What did he do?
He did ads. He did commercials.
Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha. Mm-hmm.
Am I talking too fast?
No, you're doing great.
So I suppose that was the idea. And then I didn't know what to do. My brother didn't really know what to do, I don't think. And he got involved he was drumming for a band for a long time with Peter Capaldi was the singer, who's the Doctor Who for a while. And then I wasn't sure what to do. And a friend of mine was applying to drama schools. And so I thought I would do that too. And then I got accepted to the Royal Scottish Academy of Music and Drama. And so then I was doing drama. Like there was only 20 people in my year. So it was like kind of intense to be accepted there. Mm-hmm. Then after that, I needed to get my union card. So I started doing cabaret. And then after that, someone offered me £250, which seemed like just so much money, to do 3 minutes of stand-up comedy on television. So I started doing stand-up. And then someone produced, they said they would give me money to do an hour-long stand-up show. So then I agreed because money was involved. But I couldn't write a stand-up show, so instead I wrote a play, and play won all these awards and got made into a little TV thing.
And what was it called?
It's called Heart and Soul. It's about a woman who falls in love with a fish.
Heart and Soul. And can we see it on YouTube?
Maybe. I don't know.
So Heart and Soul, and Soul, S-O-L-E.
Yeah.
Falls in love with a fish.
Yeah. And then I wrote 3 series of a sitcom for myself for BBC Radio. And then I was doing some more, and I did quite a lot of plays. I used to write a lot for BBC Radio 4. In fact, at one point, the producer told me that there's a pay grade in BBC Radio. Like the more you write, the more money they give you per hour or per minute, actually. And the producer told me that the only person who was earning more money than me at that point per minute was Harold Pinter. I was like,
Harold Pinter.
Yeah. So he was alive then. And so then I came over here to write for Late Night, and then I was writing for Pixar, and then I decided to write for myself. Mm-hmm. I got my green card, and I was like, there's a thing about, I got my green card on Independence Day.
Really?
2012.
That's fairly poignant.
Yeah, well, that was it. I was like, I think it's time for me to do something on my own. Mm-hmm. So then I took time out and I wrote. My attorneys here were going on at me that I had to write a half hour because I'd written so much sitcom. And so then I thought, okay, well, I'll write a half hour, but I'll write 30 individual minutes. And my husband said, how are you going to do that? And I said, I'm going to do a web series where I'll do 1 minute every day. And so we ended up doing a scripted web series that went on for a year with people. And all these people were coming to do it for nothing, like Alfred Molina, Kathy Baker, Kurtwood Smith. Like, people who are really well known were like, what you got for me?
And these are just 1 minute skits or shows or episodes, basically.
It's called This Day Today.
This Day Today.
This Day Today. And it was basically on this day in history, this happened here. Here's what I think about it. That sort of remit. I think it was kind of my way. It was kind of my way of decompressing from Late Night, where you're writing 5 shows a week. So like you find that you really need to write in order to have any form of clarity because you've made that muscle. So that was a wind down from that.
And you wrote for Pixar. What were some of the films that you worked on? Brave.
I worked on Brave.
On Brave.
That was my main one. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you were also the voice of Mac in Chicken Run.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I've been like, I call myself an entertainment mongrel because I move from place to place, and that's always been my way. And like my brother is like that too, actually, which is he'll write books, but he'll also be an actor in a movie, but he'll also host Late Night. Mm-hmm. Like we in our family have a thing about, I guess, like moving around, not being stuck in one thing. Although, interestingly, my eldest sister, my only sister, she was health and safety executive. Totally different thing. Health and safety executive for all the ports authorities. So all of the ports in Great Britain, my sister was the safety executive in charge of them. And now she does something that I can't tell you, but she does safety on it, but it's a big thing. And then my eldest brother was head of sport at Al Jazeera for a really long time too.
Head of sports broadcasting?
Yeah. So we all have our own little things where we potter. They think we're like, I don't know, like little gnomes or something that like to be in and out of business.
Little gnomes. Well, and I would imagine, having this breadth of talent and experience keeps you employed in a very competitive entertainment world.
Yeah, I go in and out of entertainment. I kind of like to be in both because, and this comes back to this thing about when people think whether they're allowed to do a story. Am I allowed to do story? Can someone like me do a story? How could I use story in business? In entertainment, when people say story, what often they mean is structure. And that comes down to that when you're working in television or in movies, there are a whole load of people who need to know what the next step you're taking is in order that they know how to do their job. And so most of the task with story making for entertainment is being very clear on the structure that you're making. For business, actually, it sort of works in a different way for business people. Like when they use structure when they hang on structure in order to pitch what they're doing, then they invariably either sound kind of bored or lying or disengaged.
Do you have an example? So like you're thinking if they are too perfectly structured in their communication that it doesn't sound authentic and they just look like they're going through the motions?
Well, what they do is actually, whenever I see someone using a projector and all that stuff in the slides, the narrative that I'm getting from them is not, I really care about this. The narrative that they're giving me is, I've worked really hard on this presentation. That's what they're saying. They're not saying it openly, but it's what everybody's doing. It's like dressing up for the occasion. But they're not necessarily relaying stuff. If you watch some of the TED Talks, like Brené Brown, for example, you hear her. You can hear the truth coming out of her. And she's not necessarily using PowerPoint. She's just speaking. She's just telling you what it is that she's learned that she wants you to understand, which is, there's a bear down there or there's fish in the lake or whatever. But like often there's one, and I'm not going to shame anybody because I think that's not a cool thing to do. But I watched one and the woman had so many slides and she had all her statistics and she had everything. And I'm like, yeah, but what is the content of what you're saying? Because what you're showing me, you're so busy showing me that you've got these slides and you've found your statistics and you've got everything on, that what are you actually telling me? Because all that you're telling me is that you've worked really hard, probably spent some sleepless nights worrying about this, and it took you a long time to put it all together today and you hope I like it. Like the relaying of information, and I guess that's the thing that in my work, and you tell yours, what I am saying to people is, you're telling stories all the time. Make sure that the story that you're telling is the one that you wish to tell. So I guess the point is that with entertainment, the structure is super important so that everybody knows where they're meant to be and what they're doing. When you're trying to pitch what your business is or why you care, honesty is much more important, and it will also help you in any points of trouble. Like if you get an odd question from someone and you are all about the structure, you're floored. There's going to be like a great big crater where your answer should be. But if you're telling someone exactly what it is that you know and you know it already, then when someone asks you a question, then you can answer it because you're on track. You know what it is that you're answering. You're an expert in your field. That's the main thing that I work with in business. The main thing, which is so that if someone comes to me and say like they're an architect, or say they have say they work in medical sales or something like that, right? I'm trying to tell you things that don't actually include any of my private
Right.
clients, so that then I'm not like revealing anything. Like, so for an architect, for example, I would then only allow them, depending on who they are actually. With my architect, I would probably ask him to relay his information in the way that he cares about buildings. Like, nobody comes to a business of building stuff without actually caring about it. And so rather than telling us why we should look at why he is interesting, I want him to understand, to make us understand why his project is interesting, because I want to see the world that he knows through his eyes. And when we do that, then it means that whatever someone's working on is fascinating, even if it's like rendering, like getting rid of old.
Absolutely. Absolutely. In all the work that I've done in just studying a story and using story structure and whatever, you're right. Especially in business, it comes down to honesty. But even in great movies you watch, it's something that taps into humanity and shares an honesty through the story that you can relate to. And just literally on Tuesday, I did my very first TED Talk, a TEDx Gilbert talk out here, and they posted my video on Tuesday. So yeah, it's sort of unnerving. I haven't actually watched it myself because you know how it is watching you. But now after this show, I'm going to send it to you and you can give me a critique if you wouldn't mind, because I'll be curious. I did use PowerPoint, but no statistics.
But it would fit you. That's the point, right? It would fit you because the nature of your, so for example, if we're all, I think of people, right, as being all different types of musical instruments. So like they all have their own sound. And the task with story is that you don't look to find a story that's a universal one that fits everybody. You find the one that fits the sound of you. So like the sound of you blatantly, right? Even though we've just met each other, not so long ago and we interact mostly online, your sound is that you want to educate. You already have a desire to communicate and you very much desire for people to understand. So it's natural that someone like you would use PowerPoint. It's completely natural because your desire is to get people to see the detail of things as you do.
I try to use it maybe in the form of as if you were doing a show, a film, and I try to use imagery to punctuate or amplify what I'm saying versus bullet points and statistics and numbers to, to play off of. And so if the projector were to die in the middle of my presentation, it wouldn't matter. And some might even argue it might make it even stronger because then you would just have me sharing the truths that I've learned in the world of story and how I apply it in the branding marketing world, both for, brands for individuals, if they're trying to grow their personal influence in the world, or brands for overall organizations. But just like you said, Lynn, it comes down to the truth of that person and the truth of the organization and finding the brand story that amplifies, that articulates that truth. And then they have to live into it. Of course, they have to deliver on it, but it always comes from a place of service because they love doing this. That's why I start these shows and asked you, Lynn, did you know a time in your life when something happened that said, oh, this is what I'm about and informs who you are today? In fact, that's what my whole TED Talk was about. It was about stop looking for your epic story and start finding your scenes, those moments that have shaped who you are today. Knit those scenes together and your story will actually find you. But it comes from a place of truth.
That's awesome. I love it. And actually, we're incredibly similar in our way of thought. Because what my work is when I'm working, like I do, most of the way that I deal with people is that I have a set of questions that I ask people to tell me stories on, right? Or things. So I always ask people to do me, before I'll even work with anyone, I'll ask them to do a 3-minute story about their name. Because then I know who they are and I know what the sound is. And you can learn a whole lot just out of that one exercise. And then what happens is that I find out the story that they're telling me anyway. Like, for example, the boring person at parties, right? That person that keeps telling you the same stuff over and over again, they can't register that you have heard them. They don't know that. And so they're waiting all the time for this sign that you've heard them. I've heard you. And because they don't get it or they don't receive it, they just keep talking. They just keep going on. And similarly, there are people who have things in them, which are scenes, actually, like your scenes, where they believe that those scenes define their whole life. Like they define their whole life. So I've had people most people actually, they have one moment that they've decided is the entire narrative of their life. And like I say, the way that I see the world is that things just begin and end, and it's all a part of flow. So with my first, usually the first section of my work with people is that I find that this scene that they have defined themselves with and they have made into their story. So some people will tell me that the reason their business isn't working is because they're not as successful as they should be, or they're not as powerful in the way they talk. And honestly, the people who talk that are the loudest, angriest people are generally people who are incredibly gentle, trying to cover up some moment where they've been told that they're not whatever they are. And once I can find that scene, I get them to tell the story, and then that story becomes something that they own rather than something that they are. So then we move on to, what are your other scenes? What are those other stories? So I totally identify with what you're saying. I mean, people, the reason I got so addicted to it as well is because I spend a lot of my life constructing, right? So I'm constructing, like I say, I have a play opening in Hollywood on...
What's it called?
Friday, right? And this is called Life, Death, and Duran Duran. And it's a solo piece that one of my clients is doing, actually, about her life. And it's kind of awesome. It went to Edinburgh, did very well in Edinburgh, and it's come here. And hopefully it'll do well here. But also I'm constructing, I have another play that will open, one that I'm making from the imagination of my head for Scotland in November.
Oh, that's
I just
great.
got the dates confirmed as November. But what I've learned is that in business, people are just as artistic. So that when you find the truth from someone, when someone who tells you their truth, the artistry involved in it is as beautiful and intricate as anything that any writer would construct for any form of entertainment. All art reflects humans. All art reflects the human condition. And therefore, the human condition is amazing to hear, no matter whether that comes from an artist or whether it comes from a store assistant. If it's truthful and comes from what they know, it's beautiful. Beautiful.
Well, and Lynn, on your site, youtellyours.com, where you talk about your coaching and people can go there and learn more from your background. You've got an extraordinarily truthful blog and what you've been through the last year. And we were going to do this show, about 10 months ago, but then you had something that just absolutely ransacked you in your life. You want to talk about that a little bit? The cancer thing, yes.
Oh, the cancer thing? Yeah, I know I had cancer, which was intense. It's quite an intense journey for sure. But in fact, this time last year, I think I maybe just found out I had breast cancer. But what's fascinating about it, and actually this is the power of story. The show that is now going on to Hollywood, that's in Hollywood, has a piece in it that's a true story from Sam Shaber, the performer, about her friend from theatre camp, that she hadn't seen for years. And then when she met her, she had stage 4 breast cancer. And before this girl died, she changed the law. She had a bill introduced that meant that women with dense breast tissue must be offered or told that advised that they should have ultrasounds. So this girl changed the law before she died. And when we were working on that, it was haunting me that I should have a mammogram, that it was time for me to have a mammogram.
And you were feeling fine at this point.
Yeah, totally healthy, working on 100 different things, doing stuff, But the story kept haunting me. It literally was like, every time I heard the story, I was like, gee, I need to have a mammogram. I really need to do that. And then I booked a mammogram. It was fine. But they said, you know what? You should do an ultrasound. And in the ultrasound, they found two tumors in my breast. Invasive, so they would have killed me. And later on, so I had to have a mastectomy and everything. But later on, when they'd scanned everything, they found that the whole breast had been sporing cancer. So literally, I would have died. And I had no feelings of it, no lumps, nothing at all. And yet this story made me think, I kind of need to have a mammogram.
Wow.
I know, isn't that intense?
You were walking around feeling just fine, but through this play, as you were talking about art reflecting humanity in life, because of this play and this story, it just said, Lynn, you should probably go have a look-see and just to be sure. And then, then you got the worst possible news, I guess.
Well, the worst possible news would have been that there's nothing they could do. Right. And I do have a thing about cancer. Here's the thing. Someone told me this. Actually, one of my clients who's a doctor said to me, do yourself a favor and don't give cancer a personality. Don't try and fight it. Don't think of it as a demon. Just recognize it as this kind of group of cells that have gone a bit hinky in your body. Because actually you have a lot of cells in your body, but you just have this little group here that are trying to do some kind of revolution. Mm-hmm. And your task now is to stop it. So it really helped actually, because I don't in any way feel anything about the cancer. I actually weirdly feel like I've gone on this amazing journey during which I learned the importance of life, which is that this is all experiential. Everything that we're dealing with. In story class, I say to people, nothing that you can tell me is good or bad. I have no judgment on whether you've done something good or bad. You're not going to make me like you more or less by whatever you tell me. What I'm looking for in you is clarity, because in narrative, in story work, things are either clear or unclear. They're not good or bad stories. They're just, are they clear? Do I understand it? Or do I not understand it? Are you not making it clear to me? So with cancer, it really was very much part of this process, which I learned that I have allowed myself in life to be distracted by things that are not actually that important. I've given a personality to things, not given a personality to cancer, allowed me to then not give a personality to so many things, like money. Money doesn't have a personality. It has no feelings. It just either comes or goes. I'm not a better person if I have more money or a worse person if I don't. I'm just a person with money or not money. Money doesn't make me anything. Similarly with career. Now in my life, I understand that if things don't work in my career the way that I intended to, that actually that's an experience for me, not a terrible thing. I don't really mind if it doesn't work out with clients. Actually, clients, they come back because I don't really mind, I think. Do you know what I mean? Nobody ever leaves me. I feel like everybody's anti.
Lynn, I once had a client that I had for a decade. And I had them at the end of it. It was the airport here. And there were many other agencies that wanted that client. And they kept saying, why do you keep going back to Park & Co? And I was just a one-man band at first when they hired me. And then, I grew and was a bit bigger. And one of the chief communications folks there said, why you keep keeping this business? And I go, why is that? She goes, well, not only do you guys do good work, but you act like you don't care if you were to lose it. And that has my boss really intrigued.
But that's narrative. That's the narrative, which you are presenting yourself as a service. You are looking there so then you're going forward and saying, what can I do for you? What do you need?
And then do it really well, but you're not begging for it. It's yeah.
Well, totally, because you're not saying you have to keep me because I have a family and you're
Correct.
Responsible. When we we are always telling stories, and the people that we tell the stories to have stories of their own. So they maybe just don't need your hunger, Actually, I think that's one of the things that's one of the, even though I'm talking for hours and hours here.
Oh, you're great.
One of the major things that I want my story clients to learn is that the key to story, the key for all of it, is to listen. So I have these exercises with groups of people where I just want them to hear what other people are saying. Or like I want them to hear it and to hear, because everybody hears the same thing ultimately when they listen hard enough. And the nature of story is that it is transmit and receive. If we are all transmitting all the time, it's pointless. That we have to be able to receive the information in order for us to learn from it. So story is not just about speaking it, it is about hearing it. You know, I host for the Moth. I used to host for the Moth quite a lot, but then I got too busy. So I host for the Moth main stages, and there is nothing so powerful as the sound of 1,000 people in a room listening. It's extraordinary, and it feels primal. It feels like something else. When you hear that many people just trying to absolutely understand the world through the storyteller's eyes. It's amazing.
Well, it transports them. If that storyteller is doing a good job, then they become a part of the story and their brains kick in. You know, some say the mirror neurons kick in and they become a part of that story. That story has momentum and it has a destination and it is taking them somewhere, and done well that they're on this ride. I wanted to ask you, Lynn, you know, so much a part of story and story structure, Hollywood knows this, better than anybody, and I'm sure you work it into your plays, is that concept of the dark night of the soul, you know, when we really are just fighting and struggling and life has got us down, and that's when we get our epiphanies. We really reach our aha moments. Did you feel like what you were doing, battling with cancer, and in your blog, again, you talk about where you had to go back in and you got an infection, and it was a really, really dangerous infection. So like right when you appeared to be overcoming the cancer, then your body reacted again, and you had a couple days there of sort of that dark night of the soul of, am I going to be okay? And they changed your antibiotics, and obviously it all worked out well. But did you find that in true story form that you arrived at these ideas of not giving cancer personality, not giving money personality? Those sorts of things don't define who we are. And without that experience, do you think you would have arrived at it?
Well, first, it's a great question, actually. The short answer is yes, right? And I'll get to it in a minute. But firstly, I believe that, well, I'll tell you what happened. I'll tell you the moment, and then that's like answering the question properly. I had a point when I was very ill, like very, very ill, and I couldn't sleep because the infection was running crazy in my body and the antibiotics I was allergic to. So I had literally everything was oozing and I wasn't able to sleep. My mind was going crazy. And I had what I guess was like these visions. And I call them visions rather than kind of dreams because they were loud. They were really loud, like noisy. And the first one was that I was at a fairground. I was at a fairground and there was a roller coaster in front of me, and the name of the roller coaster was Life. It had Life written in curly letters in this big thing. And then there would be a bell that rang, and beside Life, it had like this kind of light up neon sign that said, "This ride is experiential. Keep your hands inside the carriage. This ride is experiential. Keep your hands inside the carriage." And so I got onto the car, the little cart that goes round, and my husband was beside me, my children were at the back, and we were going up and down on this roller coaster. And all we were meant to do was like go, "Wow, this is amazing," when we were up at the tall heights, and go, "Ooh," when we were like at the bottom, you know. And alongside the roller coaster, there were great big giant metal trees. And on the trees, there were like stones with names on them. Where trees would have fruit, there was like stones. And the names were things like riches, success, friendships, adoration, like all these different things, wealth, you know, importance. And in front of me, this guy was there was the carriage in front of me. And as the carriage went by, this guy held out to importance and he wouldn't let it go. He wouldn't let it go. He grabbed a hold of the stone and he wouldn't let it go. And he was like kind of exploded into two people. And as he did so, the bell rang and this sign came up and said, "This ride is experiential. Keep your hands inside the carriage." And really what I understood about it was a kind of a reflection of what I've seen in my life, which is that people find things. I have found things, moments in life, and generally with people that I work with, they're not happy moments. The moments that people hang on to tend to be ones that really hurt them, that they didn't understand, but they hold on to them and they will not let them go, even though the journey is continuing. And so eventually that thing that they have held on to is the thing that destroys them. It's not the ride itself. The ride is just experiential, but like see things and let them be and move on to the next one. And that's so helped with everything that I work in and how I suppose that moment of the soul was like a really, really clear version of what I sort of knew already, but I needed a point for it to become really clear. So like I had cancer, it was tough, but I don't. And I like now I have a choice. I totally have a choice in my perspective. My choice can be, I had cancer. It was really scary. Man, look at me. I had cancer. It might come back. Or my choice is, man, I had cancer. And by the sheer grace and luck and education and whatever it is of the people around me, they took it away. So I either can see myself as somebody who had a terrible journey or someone who is the luckiest person in the world. And where I see myself, to be honest, is the luckiest person in the world.
That's awesome. And let me ask you, that is an incredible metaphorical vision that you could actually create a very powerful, short little film out of for everybody and anybody to go on the experiential roller coaster in the carriage and to that truth of it's not the ride that kills us, but it's what we choose to hang on to if it's not serving us is what is ultimately our demise. Do you think that you are predisposed to that kind of beautiful vision in the way you articulated it because of your background in writing and acting and playwright and storytelling? Or are these visions you think that most people can and do experience, they just don't know what to do with them?
I think, well, firstly, thank you for saying that. It was a beautiful thing to say. I think that I come back to my thing that we're all musical instruments. Like I work with people who can't speak. Sometimes they can't speak, but they can paint. So some people I wouldn't let. In fact, here's a point. Sometimes I work with writers, like quite often I work with writers, very successful writers who are having blocks. They come quite a lot because we are told that a block is something that we should be terrified of, but actually a block is not. A block is a new doorway, which says, and this is in everything, not just in writing, a block is an opportunity for you to change and learn. And when you don't let the terror of not knowing what to do affect you, you find that you kind of metamorphosize into something that you really wanted to be but weren't before. So a block is an opportunity. And often for writers, I will not let them write. I will ask them to bring me paintings. Or if they are TV writers, I'll make them write me prose, maybe. Or sometimes I'll ask for a song. Or I'll ask them to bring me something that matters to them, that represents what they feel. I think that we all of us have this thing that we can communicate. My belief is truly, actually, that the secret of the universe is here. That the secret of the universe is totally here. But the deal is we all have one little part of the jigsaw. And until we can let the jigsaw join together, we can't see it. So everybody's piece is just as important. But the issue is being able to allow people or find a way for people to communicate the thing that they know in a way that they are comfortable with. So I think that for me, I like to use words and my Scottish accent or whatever makes me sound more honest, or I don't know. But for some people, you listen to music and you can hear it. I listen to, there's actually Edvard Grieg has a song that I love so much in Peer Gynt. There's a thing called Solveig's Song. And I sometimes will get people to listen to that because you can hear what he's trying to say in that music. It's very clear what he's telling you.
And Edward Grieg, he was what, a 19th century composer? Yeah.
Norwegian, yeah. But but it's there. It's there when you hear good music. You know, there's somebody, I can't remember who said it. It was a brilliant quote, which is when people hear good music, it makes them homesick for something that they never had and never will have. You know, like we all have art. I've heard these. Actually, this guy, he was one of the people that educated me so much, because I do believe in my work that it is, you know, transmit and receive. Like, I do teach people story, but they really do, without sounding all kind of Little House on the Prairie. They really do teach me back. I had a guy who had worked at Guantanamo for a long time, and his job was to guard Guantanamo. And obviously, you know, those guys are trained in things. They have a very different lifestyle from me, but they're humans. We're all humans. We all have the condition. And I asked him different things about, you know, the different stuff that I can't reveal because of his privacy and whatever. But I got to a point and I said to him, but why? And he said, I looked out in the darkness for so long that the darkness started looking into me. And what that was a moment of such beauty, of such poetry, from a guy that wouldn't have been seen by the entertainment industry as being someone who could. But people do that all the time. I had someone say to me at one point, every time it cracks me, was she said, the sky looks so very blue when you think you'll never see it again. Like, people say things, these are just people. They're like people that you see at bus stops, or, you know, when you're wandering around getting your groceries. They're all doing their stories. And we live currently in a place where we are preoccupied with the structure of them rather than the content of them. In my work, I get really tired if people come and try and give me structure. Like, it's a thing that will get me insulted. I'm like, I always want to know, why should I care? Why should I care about what you're saying? And when they tell me the why, like, why should I care, is I looked out in the darkness for so long that the darkness started looking into me. That's what he wanted me to know. And why should I care is the sky looks very blue when you think you'll never see it again. That's what she needed me to know. Those are the little pieces of the jigsaw, and we all have them. I feel like so much of the time, and with a lot of my work, the people that I'm working with are scurrying around trying to find the right way to say it rather than the thing that they need to say.
And Lynn, how do you get business executives to open up to this concept? We started the show when you were talking about that we that are not in the entertainment industry feel like we do not have permission to show our artistry and tell our stories and be vulnerable and authentic. And you know, I hesitate to say truthful and honest, but to the point that it hurts, that you, like, no, here's what it's all about. How do you get them over that? How do you get them to open up to the fact and actually find the courage to be able to start communicating like that?
Well, because I do these exercises, like if we did one now, right, then I do these exercises which are, tell me a story about this, tell me a story about that, tell me a story.
Can we do one right now?
Yeah, it's okay. So can you set a timer, or I'll set a timer?
I've got a timer right in front of me because I'm watching the recording going down. So how long do we have?
Let's do 2 minutes, because I don't want to do it too long, right?
Okay, you got it.
You give me a 2-minute story about your name.
2-minute story about my name.
Yeah.
I am Park Lewis Howell. My middle name comes from my grandfather. My first name is a little different. I was born to a family of 7 kids. All of us came on the planet in 9 years, so we are all packed together. There is Dan, Melody, Tom, Steve, Chris, and Mike, and then Park. So I was the odd man out of the 7, no doubt about it. And I asked my father, where did this name come from? My father was a Depression-era kid that grew up in North Dakota. He became a civil engineer. His very first job out of the University of North Dakota was working for the lead city engineer in Fargo. His name was Park Tarbell. He was a Norwegian with his first name of Park. And I said, what was it about him that inspired, me as his namesake? And he said, well, he was the kindest guy, and he got things done simply and happily. And that's why by the time you came around was about the time he passed away, and we wanted to keep that going. his namesake going. So you became Park Lewis Howell. That's where I come from. And if my dad has one theme in all of us in raising us, it is happy and happiness. In fact, he even has a 12-acre spread up in Seattle he called the Happy H for Howell. So that's where my name comes from.
Brilliant. Right. Do you hear how much you told me?
Mm-hmm.
What you told me, first of all, right? You told me, like, the name is where you see yourself in the world. Like, who do you see yourself as in the world? What you've told me is that what's important to you in life is happiness and kindness. You told me how much you respect and adore your father. You also told me how important it was for you to have order in your house, a house that was very, very busy, that had a lot of people, not just you. So in order for you to have your place in it and your space to do things, you had to be organized. That you respect the people who come before you. You respect history. You have no desire necessarily to stir up trouble. You want to bring stuff from history that's happy and kind forward, and you want to do it in an organized way.
Wow. All that in the name of my...
Totally. You just told me it. Yeah. Right? But that's the point. So and it's beautiful. It makes me like you more, actually, even though I'm not meant to.
Thank you.
But I do. I'm like, God, you've told me, and you respect this, the thing that runs in you, the narrative that's running in you is about this guy, the kindest guy you'd ever known, simply and happily. Like, that's one of the things that's echoing in your, like, if we were talking about music, it's kind of your harmony. It's where you're aiming for. It's the song that you like. That's your music. So how I access business people, or like, I actually don't really seek anybody out, to be honest. People come and then they bring other people, and that's how I do it. But the people come and they stay with me because I show them that they're already telling a story. Like, you're really lucky, actually, although you bring it on it yourself, but your story is beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
Your sound is beautiful. And therefore, people will naturally gravitate to you because they can hear the song of you and your intention is kind. But for many people, here's one. I had a client, right? And he just sounded creepy. He sounded creepy, man. Like, he creeped out women. He was the guy that nobody really wanted to hang about with at parties. He sounded creepy. And so we did the exercises, and I asked him these stories that he told me, because he told me stories in the way that you did. And he had people that were there like you had people. But in his background story was one of where he'd been excluded. And what he'd learned was that he would be the hateful person in the room. He would be the one that people would attack. So the reason his sound was there was his sound was anticipating the next attack. And as a result, he was causing pain to himself in the way that he journeyed through life. So then we like got to the scene, like your thing about scenes, Park. Like, we got to the scene that happened that he believed was his whole story. And then we went through the narrative. And once he owned that narrative, once he could see that it was just something that he owned, his sound changed. He changed because he could go into a conversation not anticipating this thing. And also because he knew that he was doing it. He had the awareness that that was something that he was playing. And so people do it. My sister works in business. She uses the story thing sometimes too, because I give her exercises, because when she's dealing, if you've got problems in the workplace, like if you've got a group of people who aren't working well together, you can use narrative totally to find out who's the problem or what the problem is. Because when you use this kind of work, you can hear who's the person who's instigating. You can hear who's frightened. You can hear who is swaying between the two. And you can hear somebody who's just like, blah, 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 not listening. Like, it all comes out in story when we hear what the core is, when we're not bothered about the structure. So in short, the reason that business people come back to me is because once people realize that they're telling a story and that they're not in control of the story that they're telling, then they want to get that sorted, and they want to get it sorted quickly.
And going back to the creepy guy for a second, so he was living into this bad story, this darker story of him, because he was expecting and anticipating to be the guy left out. And so he was acting that character. Does that also go back to your concept of don't give that story a personality?
Totally. It totally does, yeah. But what it is like I love for people to get to a point where they see their own stories as objects. Like when they get to something, and so I've had some, the Guantanamo story was pretty freaking horrific, to be honest. But when the guy owned it, when it was something that was his, the sense of relief of knowing that it's something that you own rather than something that you have to wear for the rest of your life. I mean, imagine you were given like a sweater when you were 12 and people went, right, okay, you got to wear that sweater for the rest of your life. The rest of your life, you're the guy that wears that sweater. But that's what people do with narratives. They take these stories and they live them, man. They live them. And when they're released from it, it's beautiful. And also when they see that it's something that they can make, when people see that the thing that they feel like they are burdened with is actually something that they own and is of value, then that's a beautiful feeling. It's a beautiful feeling to see that change in people.
Lynn, I could sit here and talk with you all day long. This is absolutely fascinating. And your approach on it too, like you say, there's not that structure to it as much as there is just sort of digging into the human psyche and understand what are these stories or scenes or moments that people are living into in a positive way or a negative way. And how can you change those? How can you own them so that you can shed that sweater if you don't want that story anymore, but then really live into that more powerful moment scene that you have in your mind that you've experienced, that you can really be the best you can possibly be by telling yourself and living into your most powerful story.
Yeah, you already are the best. Yeah. You just have to allow yourself to be it. Like, people are magnificent. They are. Granted, there's a few douchebags. Well, there's quite a lot of douchebags. But
you got to ask yourself, what douchebag story are they living into? I mean, come on. It's probably not their fault, actually.
I did have one client who scared me. Like, I heard his story, and what his story was, what he wanted me to understand was weakness is opportunity. And it was the scariest thing I could hear. That was his music. His music was weakness is opportunity.
So take advantage of
so he was going to spend, he was just waiting for people to show weakness so that he could destroy them. And actually what he did do was he ended up, he came through someone else and he ended up, I think he took $100,000 or something. He screwed them out of $100,000 by doing this thing. So that's the point. If the people had been able to hear him, they would never have gone into business with him, because he was saying from the beginning, as soon as you show weakness, I will take my opportunity. It's crazy.
Yeah, and you were working with him. Were you able to turn him?
No, I wouldn't, because, well, one that all I do is hear it. But actually what happened was he, in the end, dropped out of my class. He didn't turn up. And then I called him and I said, are you okay? Because often people will have like things going on. I said, are you okay? And he said, oh man, I so forgot about you. Right? He was looking for my weakness. I don't mind if people forget about me, but a lot of people do. I said, no, I'm okay with that. And I said, where are you? And he said, I'm downtown. I'm so sorry that I've let you down. And I said, honey, you have not let me down. You are no relation to me. I am here to help you. I'm sorry that you cannot be helped. Because he wanted to get in somewhere and find my weakness to take his opportunity. It was so mental. So he wasn't working with me, but he came through clients of mine who were in business, had brought him along because he was so adorable. And then not long after that, actually, those clients were the ones he screwed out of $100,000.
Well, and I would imagine too that in your story work, as I've seen in some of mine too, is that you were starting to reveal his truths to him, and he didn't want to deal with it, or he was happy with this truth of doing this. This is just the way he saw the world, and he wasn't about to change. So you probably opened up a wound, and he said, you know what? I don't want to be around her because she's going to find me out.
Yeah, maybe. I think if you spend your life looking for weakness, then you don't. It's a terribly isolated place. I have my own feeling about it. I think actually what I heard was illness. I think I heard what mental illness is. But I'm not qualified in that area to deal with it, so I wouldn't. Like, I don't want to mess with people mentally. I just want them to tell me what it is that they know.
Right.
So he was a precarious one for me. Not as precarious as he was for the others, though.
Yeah, $100,000 later, precarious.
I know.
So, a final thought for our listeners, leaving as they turn off this episode. Hopefully share it with their friends and family, because this has been just absolutely amazing.
Oh, bless you. Thank you.
A recommendation for them, something that we could all do right now when we turn this off, to think about our story or become a little bit better of embracing that story artist in ourselves?
For people, I do this thing where I'm like, for people who are trying to loosen up story, I would ask them to do a 3-minute story every day, record it. Do not write it down, because when you write it down, you're invariably trying to please some 3rd grade teacher that made you feel like a douchebag. So, like, record it on your phone or something if you're wanting to open stuff up, and do it about the senses. So every day you do a story about the senses. So I smelt, I touched, I saw, I heard, what's the other one? Smell, 5 senses. Touch, smell. Anyway, I saw, I smelled, I heard, I felt, God, I can't believe I can't do the 5 senses. Anyway, that shows what I kind of, inside my head.
Oh, I taste.
I taste. There you go. I taste. See, between us, Park, we got this going. But if you can record a 3-minute story, even a 2-minute if you can't do 3, every day, then what you do is you're connecting to the self. You're connecting to the individuality of the self. The thing that I really most of all want people to understand in story work is that nobody will ever be or has ever been or ever seen the world like you do. Nobody can ever see it like you do. And therefore, your task as it is to be able to communicate what you see and what you know in the most clear way that you can. So if you do those minutes like every day, then you'll start to connect to what it is that you know as an individual, as opposed to what your 3rd grade teacher told you that you're meant to know.
That's awesome. I'm going to start doing that.
Awesome.
I love that. Lynn, where can people learn more about you and the training you do, and just take in all this wonderful wisdom?
Oh, bless you. On youtellyours.com, and you can email me at lynn@youtellyours.com. Sometimes I get distracted with my other things, and I have way too many classes going on. But I work with online people, so if you want to work with me online or whatever, like youtellyours.com, and that's where I am mostly.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much. I know how swamped you are. Good luck on the launch of your play on Friday. Where's that going to be?
It's at a place called The Complex in Santa Monica Boulevard. Mm-hmm. And it's on God, how terrible am I? I'm teching just now, so I'm like, where am I? I think it's on at 7:00. It starts at 7:00 on Friday.
And will it be running for a while? I mean, hopefully. Is this like a one-night run or a week run? Or
No. It's over the month. It's for the Hollywood Fringe. So I think it's got varied times, and actually, she's a client, so she's a wonderful client, but it's a pretty good example of how you can take your own story and build it into a product.
Excellent. All right. Making notes here. We folks will have that link to that in our show notes. So hopefully we can get some people out there as well to pack the theaters for you.
Ah, bless you. Thanks, Mark. I wish I'd met your dad. You know that? I'm like, man, I wish I'd met your dad.
Oh, he's great. He's 93 years old. He's 92, and he's still up in Seattle. His body is going strong, but unfortunately, he's battling Alzheimer's. So he had to go into memory care in December. But, the thing about it is when we show up, he is so in the moment. He can tell you stories from the past. He may not be able to remember what happened earlier in the day or even the day before, but this is a man that is living in the moment. So what more could you ask, I guess?
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
Well, Lynn, thank you so much. And thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks all of you for listening to this really amazing edition of Business of Story with Lynn Ferguson. And if you like what you hear, certainly share it with your friends, family, and colleagues. There was just so much wisdom in this show. I know we ran a little bit long for you all, but I just couldn't stop. I think, Lynn, I'm hoping we can have you back because there's so many more things that I want to ask you.
Definitely.
And in the meantime, join us next week when we will have another story artist here like Lynn for you. And in the meantime, as she says, and as I always profess, remember that the most potent story you will ever tell is the story you tell yourself. So make it a great one. Thanks for listening.